All right, let's once again take a look at some of the highlights in the 10-point manifesto launched yesterday night by the Jubilee party at the Kasarani Stadium. Before we get into that conversation on what really this means for you as a citizen. So among the pledges that were made yesterday by the president and his deputy were 1.3 million jobs every year, the start of 1-year apprenticeship program, double cash transfer to the elderly, free day public secondary schools, and 500,000 affordable homes for Kenyans, as well as the expansion of free maternity care, power to all by 2020, expansion of food production, as well as the completion of 57 large-scale dams. This is some of the promises that have been made by the Jubilee Party as they launched their manifesto yesterday night. Remember, this evening we are expecting the launch of the manifesto by the National Super Alliance. But let's now interrogate what really this means for the common mwananchi, for the citizen like you and I. Does this make any sense to you? What are the things that citizens want vis-a-vis what politicians are giving them in their manifestos? And joining me in studio now for that conversation is Victor Ateng, the Senior Programs Officer at the Twaweza East Africa. Thank you, Victor, for coming in.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Starting with that manifesto we saw yesterday from Jubilee, 10 points. But what matters the most to the citizen?
Well, those are very good points, you know, and I've said before that political party manifestos make very interesting reading until the time of implementation comes to pass, and probably 3-4 years down the line, you start asking yourself as a citizen, what has the government been doing? So at Twaweza East Africa, we run this polling platform, where we get to understand what citizens really are expecting from time to time. In other words, yes, realities and experiences. Yeah. And to an extent, a bit of it is captured by that manifesto that was launched yesterday, but most of it is not reflected.
What is this most of it that has not been captured in this manifesto?
Well, like there are basic areas, like 5 basic areas. We have devolution, we have health, we have basic education, we have food security, and we have water and sanitation. So I don't know which one to start with, but if I can touch on water and sanitation, water is a service that is provided by county governments, but we still have the national government playing a big role. Yeah. So I expected the national government in that manifesto to say we are going to support county governments to ensure that citizens have access to clean and safe water. Now, why am I saying this? Because in rural areas, which is where most Kenyans live, like 60% of the population, what you will find is that, yes, there is access to water, but we still have households where people spend up to 1 hour or more trying to get water. Basically, it's something I'm sure most people in this city, not even most people, we still have people in this city having to fetch water from various sources and bring it to the households. Just visit the informal settlements, which is where Nairobi's largest population will be found. So access to water is still a big problem. So I expected that to be very clear on what it is going to do to support the national, the county governments. I mean, to ensure that all citizens at the turn of a tap can get clean and safe water. So that's one. 2, we still have most households where women, 92% of households, where women still have the responsibility of the burden of collecting water. So you see, again, women a little bit sidelined. You know, it's a very basic thing. You know, it's better than the SGR, it's better than all this.
So for women out there, in essence, what they want to hear is how you will ensure I don't walk for longer hours to go and get water. And when I get it, it should be clean and safe to drink. Yeah,
so that's critical because that's a way of actually even preventing health, disease that is a big problem in the country. Now, let's talk about basic education. So in this country, we still have a problem with the infrastructure. Yeah. So in our surveys, what we have seen is that over 50%, like 56% of citizens have been saying lack of teachers in primary schools, not even secondary schools, remains a big challenge. They feel it, they see it from time to time. So I expected the national government, in addition to saying we are going to ensure that there is free secondary education, we are also actually going to ensure that we have enough teachers in our schools. The teachers are well paid. The infrastructure is supportive of the learning that is expected to take place in the schools, because that's where the problem is at the moment. So free secondary education is good, and in fact that should be it's a universal right. You know, it's one thing that should be basic, and should have come long ago.
Yeah.
But what is the infrastructure? Yeah. Have we thought about it?
There have also been concerns since we started this free primary education program under the government for Mwai Kibaki that the quality of education in the country has gone down.
Yes, it's true, because one of the most recent surveys we did shows that there is a feeling that pupils are leaving primary school without the basic skills. So there are those concerns. So how do we merge free primary education, free secondary education, to ensure that it is well supported and that we are producing skillful individuals that are going to the job market or are proceeding with learning? So those are some of the things that both NASA and Jubilee need to be thinking about clearly and articulating, because otherwise those things make very colorful, interesting reading, whether it's soft or hard or print, but what do they mean for the citizen? So
currently there's a disconnect between all these promises of free education, laptop programs, vis-a-vis the quality of education we get.
Our surveys actually show there's a disconnect, because I don't think these people did, and both sides did their research well to understand what citizens really are saying about the issues that are important to them. So and that's why I don't know what happens when they start implementing these things. When we do a survey probably next year at the same time, or in 2 years' time, I will not be surprised, Takisa, to come back here and say citizens are still not happy. Citizens are still not satisfied. Let's talk about health. I mean, on health...
Yes, health is fundamental and might be captured in both manifestos.
Yes, and this is just one of the areas when we did a survey last year. Citizens were saying, we feel that the health sector is in a major crisis. Like 47% say we are in a major crisis.
That's almost half the Kenyans.
And 45% we had said we have minor problems. So 92% of citizens in the country said our health sector has problems. Now, problems related to what? Problems related to availability of drugs, problems related to availability of health workers. Health workers in this country are on the strike from time to time. Right now we have nurses on strike.
There's an ongoing nurses strike.
We need a manifesto that speaks to the mwananchi, because 75% or 3/4 of the population in this country relies on public health facilities. So that means that we need to assure Kenyans, we need to do some very basic things. Like it doesn't have to be a big health facility, but it needs to be a small one at the grassroots, which is also the responsibility of county governments. And in this case, Jubilee, as national government, has its... as the responsibility of supporting county governments, because that, at the end of the day, citizens don't really want to care. When they are paid taxes, whether it's the national government or the county governments providing the service, they just want basic services. So I expected them to say, we are going to support county governments in the provision of health services. We have done that last year, but why did citizens complain? Because you can have a big facility with all the equipment, but when the health workers are unavailable because they are not happy, then you haven't solved any problem. The basic problem remains basic, just the way it is. So I expected them, and I expect even NASA today, if they have not printed their
they
copy,
should
they
think
need to
about
revise it so that they are talking to Wananchi and not talking to Jubilee, because there seems to be some level of competition between the two.
You've mentioned something very important, that there should have been a mention of how they will be supporting the county government. In the past 4 years, we've seen a tug of war between the national government and the county governments. And there have been concerns that during the launch of the Jubilee's manifesto, there was minimal mention of how they're going to support devolution.
Well,
what do Wananchi expect?
So our surveys, again, show that most Kenyans continue to support devolution. The most recent one shows that 9 out of 10 Kenyans support devolution, with 53% strongly supporting it, and the others supporting it in one way, probably just because there are some elements of it that need to be firmed up. So there is no way, I think, Jubilee was going to escape. I think this is one area where they have realized, or Jubilee has come to realize, that we cannot escape supporting devolution. But we have also seen tensions between the national government and county government. So they need to be very firm and come out strongly that we support devolution, number one. Number two, we will support devolution in the days to come. We will partner with all the 47 counties. We have seen the cases of Mombasa where there is this tug of war. I think that is not something that citizens will appreciate. We have seen the governor of Turkana having differences with the national government or the president. So citizens need to be assured that those differences are things that are just by the ways. You know, they need to come and hold hands for that support that they're talking about to be meaningful to citizens. That has to come out very strongly.
Finally, in respect of time, Victor, let's quickly talk about food security. This is a promise that has been there since 2013. We saw it yesterday. It might feature in the NASA manifesto. But something as basic as unga is missing from our shelves.
You know what? In October, when we asked citizens about their household economic conditions, more than half said they were going to bed hungry. So at that time, unga was not such a serious issue. So right now, I expect those numbers to be very high if a new survey is conducted. So government needs to be very, very much in touch with the realities. Households in Kenya report needing at least 100 shillings per person per day to meet their basic needs. Basic needs, water, food. So if you're in a household of 4 people, it means on any given day, you need 400 shillings. There is no unga. Government is struggling to explain why, and yet we know there has been 3 years, 4 years when this was in their manifesto, remember, if you read it well.
Yes.
So for ordinary citizens, this is a manifestation of failure. And those who are going to vote Jubilee will just be voting Jubilee out of sympathy and not because they have really... Because majority of citizens, 80% of citizens in this country live on meager salaries or meager income.
So your assessment, political parties, are they in touch with the realities of the citizens?
They speak to each other. Political parties in competition speak to each other. They don't speak to citizens.
They don't speak to citizens. Victor, thank you very much. Always a pleasure having you here. Victor Rateng, a Senior Programs Officer at the Twaweza East Africa. And as he says, there's very minimal realities from this manifestos we're getting. But of course, we will take a look at what NASA will say vis-a-vis what citizens want down on the ground.